then stand over there. Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very pleased today to welcome Ambassador Simon Gass, NATO's Senior Civilian Representative in Afghanistan. Ambassador Gass has been in Kabul since April 2011, so he's seen a lot of very significant developments in Afghanistan over the last 18 months, including the launch of the transition process, the growing capabilities of the Afghan National Security Forces, and of course the pledges of the international community to continue to support Afghanistan to 2014 and beyond. Unfortunately, today will be Ambassador Gass's final briefing as NATO Senior Civilian Representative before he hands over to Ambassador Maurits Jochems, who will be the new NATO Senior Civilian Representative. And of course, Ambassador Gass will be happy to take some of your questions after his initial remarks. Let me just stress, though, before I give the floor to Ambassador Gass, that this briefing, of course, is on the record. However, I would like to make sure that we keep it under embargo until 1500 today, Brussels time. Because at 1500, the North Atlantic Council will meet and Ambassador Gass will be briefing the NAC in ISAF format. And at that time, of course, we'll also publish a video recording of today's briefing. So please don't file anything until 1500, or if you do so, please do it making clear that there is an embargo until that time. Many thanks, and with that, the floor is yours, Ambassador Gass.
Thank you, Oana, and very good to see some familiar faces in the auditorium today from previous briefings which we've done either in Brussels or in Kabul. As Oana said, this is my last briefing as NATO Senior Civilian Representative, and in the last 18 months in Kabul, I've had the great privilege of representing the civilian effort of NATO. And it's allowed me to travel widely in the country. I think I've visited more than 2/3 of Afghanistan's provinces at one time or another. I've had the opportunity to talk to many Afghans from the government, from local governors, from civil society, from the military, from all different areas of Afghanistan. And as I leave the job after 18 months, I was reflecting a little bit on what are the big changes that have taken place since I was there. I think that I see three main achievements in the last year and a half, which are taking us, of course, towards the completion of the Lisbon goal of handing over full security to the Afghan security forces by the end of 2014. And the three areas that I'd particularly like to draw attention to are, first, the very substantial improvement in the capability of the Afghan security forces, both the army and the police. And this is something which is very tangible. Many of you go to Afghanistan, many of you have gone to Afghanistan over a number of years, and I'm quite sure that you will have seen the improvement in the Afghan security forces. Certainly as I talk to Afghan commanders on the ground, I've found that growing sense not only of capability but also of confidence. And we now see in some parts of Afghanistan operations being planned and conducted by the Afghan army at corps level, very high level with a lot of coordination with other bodies. We're seeing more complex operations like airborne assaults being conducted by Afghan units, and that's a major change. It doesn't mean, of course, that the process is complete. It isn't. Nor does it mean that we will end up with an Afghan army which fights like an American army would do. It's not going to be like that. But the progress has been very substantial, and over the remaining 2 years and 4 months, we will continue with that process of equipping and training the Afghan forces. And I'm pretty confident that by the time we get to the end of 2014, we will be handing over a situation in which the Afghan security forces are capable of maintaining security in their own country, as it is their responsibility and their right to do. And I think that that is quite a substantial achievement. The second part of that is the transition process. As Oana said, when I arrived in Kabul, we had not yet quite started the first tranche of transition. We are now in the third tranche. As you know, about 75% of Afghans now live in areas where the Afghan security forces are taking the lead for responsibility for security. And I expect that later this autumn we will have another tranche which will result in another slice of Afghanistan being progressively handed over to the Afghan security forces. Indeed, I hope that we will also see some provinces emerging from transition, because of course transition is a process. It has a beginning, it has an end, and then the Afghan security forces are in full control for their security. And I think we may see some provinces reaching a point where they are able to complete the transition process. That doesn't mean, of course, that ISAF wouldn't continue to support the Afghan security forces in those areas if asked to do so, but it would be a very substantial step towards the completion of our transition mission at the end of 2014. The third area, which I think has been a very substantial achievement, has been the creation of the international framework for supporting Afghanistan beyond 2014. You know, when I arrived in Afghanistan 18 months ago and I would talk to Afghan politicians about the determination of NATO and the international community not to abandon Afghanistan at the end of 2014, I used to get the response that, yes, they understood that, but how could they have confidence? After all, the Soviet Union had talked about this when the Soviets were in Afghanistan. How did they know that the international community was not this time going to walk away from Afghanistan? And I said to them that you need to be a little bit patient. You need to wait as we work out in more detail what commitments will be made to Afghanistan. And at the Chicago conference in May, not only NATO, but the international community as a whole agreed to funding the Afghan security forces into the next decade. And at the Tokyo conference, the international community also agreed on a very substantial development assistance package for Afghanistan. Now, that is a very major anchor for Afghanistan as it looks beyond transition to the period beyond 2014, to the decade of transformation. It gives a high degree of assurance that when our countries say that we will support Afghanistan, we mean it, because we have put figures to our promises. And that is a very important achievement. Of course, it places a responsibility on Afghanistan too, as we made very clear at both Chicago and at Tokyo. Our countries are prepared to make a major contribution to Afghanistan's future, but in return, Afghanistan has to convince us that it is moving in the right direction in areas like improved governance, counter-corruption, sound elections, and so forth. So this is an area where mutual commitments apply. So where does this leave us? Well, I think as I depart from Afghanistan, I feel that we are now within sight of handing over a security platform which will be sufficient for Afghanistan to be stable beyond 2014. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will be peaceful, because the insurgency is still there, the insurgency is still resilient, and to achieve peace in Afghanistan will need a political process. And as you all know, in different ways, hands have been extended to try to get that political process going. But that is what will achieve peace in the end. But what I am clear about is that neither we nor in fact the insurgents themselves actually believe that there is any more a military option by which the insurgency could return to power and topple the government of Afghanistan by force. That time has now gone, and that is why I believe that there will eventually be a political settlement. Of course, in achieving that improved security environment, we have also done what we said we would do at the beginning of this enterprise, which was to neutralise the risk of Afghanistan becoming a base for international terrorism which could threaten our countries. And that is an extremely important fundamental goal which has explained what we have been trying to do in Afghanistan in recent years. So I think that we have a good deal of success there. So when transition is complete at the end of 2014, we'll leave behind us a country which will still face multiple challenges. It will face the challenges of 30 years of conflict, which have done so much damage to Afghanistan's institutions and its infrastructure. We'll leave behind a country which still grapples with extraordinarily deep and problematic poverty and an economy which is, frankly, weak. And also a country which still has a substantial narcotics problem, substantial corruption. So Afghanistan will still face many challenges beyond 2014. But with the support of the international community, I think that we have equipped Afghanistan, we are equipping Afghanistan to be able to build its own future. And that is as it should be, that Afghans themselves need to take responsibility for where their country goes to over the next 10 years. And I think that NATO's strategy, along with the support of the international community, means that Afghanistan will be well placed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Gass.